In a world where civilization has completely collapsed, survival has become a harrowing race against time and against one's own kind. The story centers on a young man whose main motivation is to protect the woman he loves, who is gravely ill. They both live secluded in an improvised shelter that barely separates them from the outside chaos, a hostile place populated by cannibals and wild dogs, where any noise may attract creatures willing to kill. No one speaks of hope or a better future. Everything is reduced to immediate subsistence, to the search for food, and a place to spend each day without falling into the hands of violence. Since the beginning, the narration presents two essential figures, a father and his son. The father, tough and silent, teaches the young man the few tactics he knows to ensure they can see another dawn. Together, they wander through a forest that might once have been a place of peace, but now throbs with an unfathomable tension. The slightest snap of a branch or the echo of an animal on the prowl is enough to put them on guard. In this setting, it becomes immediately apparent that there is no support from any authority. There are no security forces or signs of a government trying to restore order. Every human they encounter could become an enemy, which heightens every interaction and turns each step into a genuine challenge. One day, while they stalk potential food sources, the father manages to wound a wild boar with his arrow. The animal, injured, heads into the undergrowth, and father and son move cautiously, expecting to find it on the brink of death. However, they come upon a disquieting surprise. The boar has disappeared without leaving any traces of blood or tracks in the damp soil. Confusion and frustration are reflected on the young man's face, since that prey would have meant the difference between hunger and a few days of sustenance. This incident shows that nothing can be taken for granted in a universe where even the beasts seem more elusive and chance takes on a sinister role in every move. Shortly afterward, they come across an abandoned car protruding from the undergrowth. They approach warily, checking if it hides any traps or if someone inside is ready to attack. The young man ventures to rummage through the seats and glove compartment, while the father keeps watch around them with his bow at the ready. To his surprise, the son finds a stash of cookies. The discovery seems like a small miracle in a barren land, and his survival instinct clashes with a sense of guilt. He decides to eat them in secret, fearing that his father will reproach him for his selfishness or the scarcity of provisions. During those seconds, the howling of wild dogs is heard in the distance, and they both take shelter inside the vehicle. They remain motionless, holding their breath, while the pack prowls outside, searching for any sign of easy prey. When the danger finally passes, the duo sets off back to their makeshift dwelling, a desolate space covered with sheets, wood, and the few materials they have gathered. There, the son's wife awaits, lying on a small cot, her face pale and beads of sweat on her forehead. She suffers from an injury that has not healed properly, and an infection seems to be consuming her little by little. Every step the young man takes is driven by the need to save her. They are running out of the little medicine they had, and without it, the young woman will not survive long. The only light source inside the shelter is a weak torch that casts trembling shadows on the walls, reinforcing the precarious atmosphere in which they live. The next morning, the son goes a bit deeper into the forest to explore, and in the distance, he notices the presence of a group of people. They are not merely unarmed vagabonds, but cannibals who, with dirty clothes and hungry looks, roam the area in search of new victims. Alarmed, he runs back to the shelter and alerts his father. The tension between them rises as they realize these aggressors could find them at any moment. The father does not hesitate and leads the couple to a waste pit hidden under a rudimentary cover. He instructs them to remain there in silence, without peeking out. He prepares to face them. The confrontation is brutal and brief. Although skilled with a bow and arrow, the father is outnumbered by attackers who corner him mercilessly. The son, hidden in the pit with his wife, hears muffled screams and struggling. Heart in his throat, he wants to climb out to help, but knows that if he does, he will not only endanger himself, but also his partner. Finally, the turmoil subsides, and only an eerie silence remains, confirming the worst outcome. After killing the father, the cannibals scour the area and steal their most valuable possessions. The tribe's leader looks around intently, as if sensing that someone else is hiding nearby, but a noise in the distance distracts him and the group leaves, taking the corpse with them. Stunned by the loss, the young man emerges when everything is calm and finds bloodstains confirming his father's death. Even with his mind reeling, rage and the need to protect the woman who is still convalescing drive him to make a drastic decision. He will follow those people to recover the medicine they desperately need. He convinces his wife to stay safe in the shelter, securing doors and windows with the little wood and metal left. Then he sets off without looking back. The journey proves to be a descent into the worst depths of humanity. The landscape becomes increasingly desolate, with dry trees and fog that erases the horizon. Every branch underfoot could turn into an alert for any human or animal predator lurking around. Under the biting wind, the young man feels as though his own breathing is a din that anyone could hear. Meanwhile, back at the shelter, the wife wakes up with a start upon realizing her husband is gone. When she tries to leave, she discovers the door has been blocked from inside to deter intruders. She pushes with all her might, trying to break through the barricade, but her efforts prove useless. Frustration and fear consume her as she does not know if he will return in time. The tension grows with every blow she strikes against the door, and although it is hinted that she might have been threatened by some danger, perhaps cannibals or wild dogs, she manages to survive, though she remains in great uncertainty about her own fate. Meanwhile, the husband continues tracking the cannibals, determined to recover the stolen medicine. On his way, he comes across a child, whom he tries to approach, but the little one, frightened, flees among the trees. The cold intensifies, and the man, with his clothes in tatters, needs protection. He then finds a half-collapsed house where he finds a pair of shoes and a jacket, useful for not succumbing to the low temperatures. Without lingering too long, he resumes his journey, driven by the urgency of saving his wife. Later on, he encounters a scene that shakes him: his father's bones, devoured by the cannibals. Pain grips his chest as he confirms how far the cruelty of those pursuing him goes. In an attempt to honor his memory, he digs a makeshift grave with his hands and buries the remains. Even though he cannot change what happened, he feels that giving him burial is the last act of respect possible. Then, he climbs a nearby tree to survey the terrain and, in the distance, sees a column of smoke rising through the haze. As he approaches with caution, he distinguishes a group of cannibals gathered around a bonfire. Among them, there is a young woman dressed in handmade clothing, an individual who once was an army lieutenant, and a young man they call the straggler, because he usually falls behind. The leader tends to the straggler's wounds, revealing a certain level of organization within the group. Huddled, the husband realizes they are too many, and that one misstep could cost him his life. Suddenly, the barking of wild dogs echoes in the distance, and to keep warm and ward off the animals, the man starts a small fire with some nearby embers. He knows he is taking a huge risk, but sees no other way to secure a bit of shelter amid the merciless cold. Thus, the story unfolds, silent and intense, in which every decision is crucial. There are no names or dialogue, only the raw reality of a world where the living have become more dangerous than any dead creature. The following morning, the man continues on and finds a solitary tent in the middle of the wasteland. Inside lies a corpse in an advanced state of decomposition. The stench forces him to cover his nose while he searches for any remaining valuables. Among them, he finds a small sharp knife and a whistle, which he decides to keep as potential allies in his mission. With the knife and whistle secured, he moves on until he spots, amid the undergrowth, the same child he saw before. Once again, the little one flees, perhaps fearing he is another predator. Without stopping to reassure the minor, the man opts to continue on his way toward the cannibal camp. On his advance, he comes upon the huntress of the group, a hardened woman who is heating water and taking care of survival tasks. Determined to infiltrate and find the medicine, he sneaks closer, but she senses his presence and attacks him fiercely. They engage in a grueling struggle, after which he manages to kill her, shaken by the violence he is forced to commit. To avoid being discovered, he hides the body and goes into hiding, watching how the rest of the cannibals return to camp. Noticing that the huntress is missing, they begin searching for her and finally find her corpse. Enraged, they hold a sort of ceremony in which they incinerate their companion, while the husband looks on from the shadows, fully aware that vigilance will now be even greater. In the early hours of the next morning, when most of the group is asleep, the man sneaks silently into the caravan where the cannibals are resting. He spots the key to a purse hanging from the leader's neck. After a tense moment, he manages to grab it and open the bag, finally finding the medicine for his wife. Without wasting time, he locks the caravan door from the outside, hoping to slow down anyone who might pursue him. However, he steps on a rudimentary alarm system that alerts the leader and her accomplices. A frantic chase ensues. The husband runs while arrows whistle past him. He reaches the house where the child had taken refuge and comes across the footprints of wild dogs leading him inside. He discovers that the dogs have killed the boy's grandfather. Stunned by the sight, the protagonist leaves the house and falls into the hands of the cannibals, who recognize him as the son of the man they killed days earlier. They tie him up and, searching his belongings, find the whistle he carries around his neck. When the leader lifts it curiously, the man seizes the opportunity, blowing it hard to summon the wild dogs. Immediately, the barking intensifies and the tribe is gripped by panic. The leader, in an act of utter cruelty, tries to sacrifice a young woman from his own group, throwing her toward the dogs to save himself. Amid the chaos, the husband takes advantage of the moment to use the knife and cut the ropes binding him. Free once again, he bolts into the undergrowth, but a lieutenant who once served in the army pursues him. They engage in hand-to-hand combat in which the protagonist is forced to kill the ex-soldier. Meanwhile, the leader attempts to shoot him with a bow, but the bowstring snaps. With no recourse, she finds herself surrounded by the dogs. The man manages to slip away, although the nightmares of all he has experienced will haunt him forever. Later on, he finds a partially intact house where he locates a firearm, an assault rifle, and some water and food. He cannot afford to rest, as his wife waits for him at the shelter, gravely ill. While gathering supplies, the leader, badly wounded but still alive, shows up once more, trying to kill him with the rifle. The husband reacts before she can pull the trigger, firing the pistol he managed to retrieve. The bullet hits its mark and definitively ends the threat. With the medicines and some provisions, the man heads back. Along the way, he leaves some food for the child he freed, holding on to the hope that somewhere the child might endure the savagery of this world. Finally, he reaches the shelter. He finds the door open and a great mess, but no sign of his wife. His heart tightens, fearing everything was in vain. However, she appears from a corner, pale but alive. It is hinted that the dogs, drawn by the whistle he blew, also kept her safe from a potential cannibal attack. They both look at each other with indescribable relief. With the medicine in his hands, the husband sets about treating her wounds and caring for her. Although the loss of his father and the brutality they have endured seem to sap any hope in such a cruel world, The fact that he has saved her provides at least a faint ray of light amid the despair.